Well, here we are, 3D Sonic. I'm sure at least a few of my friends were waiting for me to get here, so let's get it started. Well, first we have to talk about the state of Sonic around this time, and in turn Sega. After Sonic and Knuckles release, Sonic throughout most of the late 90s had kinda hit a wall. The video game industry around this time was going through a transitional period as companies were trying to put out consoles capable of 3D graphics. This is where Sega steps in and reveals their new home console, the Sega Saturn. It's said to be capable of 3D graphics, and while technically yeah it was, the console was very complex and hard to develop for, especially compared to its competitor the PlayStation. Due to this, the 3D on the console didn't reach the peaks it could have, and third-party support dwindled while the PS1 quickly rose in popularity for also having stunning 3D graphics at the time, as well as having third-party support due to being easier to develop for. This was just one of the main issues that killed the Saturn out the gate, the other being Sega releasing the Saturn way earlier than disclosed to the retailers game devs. That original date being September 2nd, 1995, and instead opting to release it over 3 months earlier on May 11th. This meant that planned games were not ready yet at the system's launch, meaning that the Saturn only has 6 launch titles. Meanwhile, PlayStation had 17. There were of course other numerous issues with the console post-launch, but I won't get into them here. But what does all this have to do with Sonic, you may be asking? Well, Sonic around this period was relegated to only spin-offs. I already mentioned Mean Bean Machine, Sonic Spinball, and Sonic 3D Blast, but there were also Sonic games being made for the Game Gear, which was the Sega handheld made to rival Nintendo's Game Boy. I'll also cover these as well sometime in the future, but the point is that there was a noticeable lack of a home console Sonic game akin to Sonic 3K on the Sega Saturn, nor was there a revolutionary 3D Sonic platformer. This more than likely was a cause for concern for Sonic fans around this time, and another reason the Saturn to even more unappealing. Not helping was the fact that the only Sonic games that did make it to the Saturn was a Saturn port of Sonic 3D Blast, a Sega Genesis game, Sonic R, a 3D Sonic racing game, and Sonic Jam, a compilation of Sonic 1, 2, 3, and Sonic and Knuckles. Sonic R and 3D Blast both receiving mixed reception. There was supposed to be a big Sega Saturn Sonic game released called Sonic Extreme, but that game would face development hell and eventually get cancelled in 1996, officially leaving the console with no original 2D or 3D mainline Sonic game. At this point, Super Mario 64 had released and revolutionized 3D gaming as we knew it, and Crash Bandicoot followed right after it, housing stunning graphics and fun gameplay. Eyes would be on Sonic wondering when he would make the big jump, considering he was rivaling Mario still around this time, but the closest we got to a 3D Sonic platformer was the Sonic World level in Sonic Jam, but it wasn't nearly as impressive as Super Mario 64. Eventually though, in 1998, Sega would officially stop supporting the Saturn as they wanted to focus on their new console they had been working on since 1997. This would end up being the Sega Dreamcast. This console will be released over here in the States on September 9, 1999, or 9/9/99. It would also launch with a brand new fully 3D Sonic platformer, that being the topic of today's video, Sonic Adventure. When this game launched, it was met with critical acclaim and would lay the groundwork for the direction of Sonic going forward at this time. Sonic Adventure today is almost 25 years old, and while I haven't fully beat this game in a while, I remember loving it when I first played it after downloading off the PlayStation Store way back when on the PS3. But all that was ages ago. Let's see what my thoughts on it are today. So upon selecting the adventure mode, you're immediately greeted with a character select screen, and while you can only choose Sonic, you'll be able to unlock Tails, Knuckles, Amy, Big, and Gamma as you play through Sonic's story. Looking through this screen, you can also see that Sonic and friends look a lot different from how they did on the Genesis. Since Sonic R, Yuji Uekawa had been the lead character designer for the series, and since Sonic Adventure was this huge leap forward for the franchise and by proxy Sonic's world, he wanted the cast to have new designs to appear more teenage-like and more mature. And I love all of his redesigns here, I have no complaints. To go back to what I said earlier though, yes, I said Sonic story. Each character has their own thing going on, and while they all at some point intertwine into another character's story, each character has events unique to their own story and their own endings on top of having their own unique gameplay style, but for now, I'll give a story synopsis on all of them. One night Sonic is out doing his thing when suddenly he notices a band of police cars rushing down the street. Wondering what's going on, he quickly follows them and witnesses them corner and attempt to take down a water creature to no avail. After jumping in and quickly dealing with the new threat, the creature escapes into the sewer while Robotnik mocks Sonic, revealing that the creature's name is Chaos, the god of destruction. We've gone 3D for about 3 minutes and Sonic is already challenging his first god. They grow up so fast. A couple of days pass and Sonic is relaxing by the pool when he notices Tails' plane crash by the beach. Later, after rescuing him, you find out he crashed because he was testing using a Chaos Arm as a power supply for his new plane he'd been working on, and then tells Sonic to come to his workshop to show him something. Which, unless I missed something, I don't think Tails ever got to show Sonic whatever it is he wanted, due to the fact that upon arriving at his workshop, Robotnik shows up demanding their Chaos Arm, and after a very short scuffle, he falls, but takes the emerald from Tails due to his guard being down. Chaos then emerges and gets fed the emeralds, becoming even more powerful, and Robotnik explains that according to some tablets he found, Chaos gets stronger after being given emeralds, and he plans to give him all 7 and then use Chaos to completely destroy Station Square, the city that Sonic was in earlier. Probably should have said that. On the city's ruins, though, he's going to build Robotnik Land, a city where he rules over everything. So now it's up to Sonic and Tails to track down the rest of the emeralds before Robotnik does, and that's essentially the rest of Sonic's story. You do run into other characters, and after the first time you talk to them in a cutscene, they do unlock and you can play as them, but the main goal is always to get the emeralds before Robotnik, but something always goes wrong during the process. After Casinopolis, he gasses you when you attempt to pick up Chaos Emeralds he made you drop, and after Ice Cap you run into Knuckles, who Robotnik manages to trick again into thinking you're the bad guy. And after that fight, you drop more emeralds and then have to contend with Chaos 4, a boss fight that I don't remember taking this long when I was little, but felt like it took ages during my Sonic run. I figured now is as good of a time to mention this, but as you can tell from the footage, Sonic and the cast are speaking now, and I won't lie, I remember the voice performances in this game being a lot worse. But with this playthrough, I also have a few lines that I definitely think should have had another take.
That's Eggman! I wonder what happened to Sonic.
Watch out! You're gonna crash! Ah!
The overall voice acting is fine, I think for the VA's forced performances they did good jobs. Sonic is voiced by Ryan Drummond, Tails by a kid at the time of the name of Corey Bringus, Knuckles is done by Michael McGarn, Amy Jennifer Dulliard, and Robotnik, who I can now start calling Eggman because Sonic has officially introduced that nickname to him. He's voiced by Dean Bristow, who would go on to voice Eggman until Sonic Advance 3, but sadly passed away of a heart attack in 2005. To jump forward a bit here, he did an amazing job as Eggman in not only this game, but also the following titles to come. He's menacing while also selling me the fact that Eggman is a really smart scientist with big dreams.
You fool. Away, before I make mincemeat out of you.
There's also 3 characters new to the series, 2 of which I've already mentioned. Most infamous of them is Big, a laid-back fat oaf voiced by John St. John. I got thoughts about this cat, but we'll save that for later in the video. There's also Gamma, voiced by Steve Brody, who also sadly passed away. And finally Tikal, a female Lost Echidna tribe member voiced by Alara Disler. Throughout the story, a red flash of light will sometimes get in your character's face and you'll be teleported to a time-long past and you'll get to see and talk to long-lost members of the Echidna tribe. You're meant to piece together the story of what happened to these guys by sewing together the information you get from each character's experience here. You can also get more information by talking to these guys, and they do have some things to say, but some of these guys can be kinda dickish and one-track minded, which kinda led to their downfall, but we'll get there when we get there. Anyway, Sonic and Tails eventually take to the skies after Eggman reveals his new floating battleship, the Egg Carrier, and this attempt goes horribly, ending in them getting shot out of the sky by the ship's laser cannon. Sonic then thankfully falls into some sand, and then tries to find Tails to see if he's okay. This leads into him running into Amy, who's taking care of this bird, and she forces Sonic to take care of her, leading to them finding a place called Twinkle Park, where cute couples get in free. How convenient, especially because they were getting chased by one of Eggman's robots. The two end up getting separated though, and said robot captures Amy and takes her to the egg carrier, in which Sonic tries to catch up to it on foot through the mountain, and obviously fails. But thankfully this is when Tails finds Sonic, and they try one more time to catch up to the egg carrier, this time managing to do so, landing on the wing of the aircraft. Eventually, the duo make their way to Amy, saving her, but the ship begins to lose altitude, so Sonic continues to chase and try to put a stop to Eggman, telling Tails to take Amy and leave. Once Sonic catches up to Eggman, it's shown that he wasted no time in feeding Chaos those emeralds, one of which is revealed that the bird Amy was sheltering had, but thankfully Sonic is still able to make short work of the monster, ending in Sonic revealing that he ate the human fruit model Nika, because look at this shit. He just casually jumped off an airship and just hit the ground and shrugged it off like it was no big deal.
I hate Eggman.
Anyway, Sonic's story ends with him taking a detour and seeing a mural depicting what would have happened if Chaos went full power from the emeralds. And then that bright light comes in again to show Sonic more imagery that he can't make much out of, but once that ends, the Hedgehog sees Eggman going towards his base. Sonic wastes no time, following the Doctor and then finding him in their last encounter, in which the Hedgehog is victorious, and he goes back to Tails' workshop and jumps off the island. Why? I don't know. Sonic's story is about what you would expect, him versus Eggman. I usually replay only his story when I revisit this game, but also skip the cutscenes, but now that I've experienced the story in full, I really enjoyed it. Although I wish I could say I enjoyed Tails' story as much as Sonic's. I don't hate it, in fact I still think it's good, it's just that because Sonic and Tails spend so much time together in their story, a lot of the cutscenes in Tails' story have a little bit of overlap with Sonic's. Not exactly the same, as something cool about this game is that each character perceives events slightly differently due to their personalities, so while Sonic isn't frightened by Eggman's threats at all, Tails perceives Eggman as a lot more menacing due to his young age and inexperience.
If it isn't Sonic!
Look, it's a giant talking egg.
Silence!
Well, well, well. If it isn't Sonic and Tails.
It's Eggman!
Silence!
But that still doesn't change the fact that it's essentially the same cutscene as before, as cool as these details are. I might only have felt this way because I was essentially marathoning all these stories and I played Tails' story right after Sonic's. However, whenever Tails' story diverges from Sonic's and unique events are happening, I'm back to enjoying it a lot more, and while his levels are similar to Sonic's as well, you're racing against him or another character depending on the story context, so it's fine still. His story ends in him stopping Eggman from setting off a missive. Setting off a missile in Station Square, where after he defeats Eggman, the citizens celebrate and congratulate Tails, and he finds new confidence in himself, as well as some independence away from Sonic, which is a good character arc for him. So far we're 2 for 2, not bad. Next up is Knuckles. The Red Kid starts his journey on Angel Island, pondering about his duty of guarding the Master Emerald when suddenly chaos appears after the Master Emerald shatters due to Eggman shooting it from the egg carrier. The creature then flees, and due to the Master Emerald being broken, Angel Island starts to fall into the ocean. After this, Knuckles gets to work in locating the Master Emerald shards, and that's all of his campaign. You get to see how Eggman tricked him into a conversation with Sonic, and when Tikal sends you back to the past, surprisingly enough, Knuckles doesn't question too many of these echidnas on the history of his race. And it's not like you can't interact with these guys either, everyone can. Kind of a missed opportunity there. Regardless, once Knuckles gets the last of his emerald pieces, he puts the Master Emerald back together, and Angel Island floats back into the sky, and Knuckles is at peace, ending his story. Honestly, I like Knuckles' story, but next up is Amy's, and honestly, narratively speaking, there's nothing much here. For starters, her playthrough is one of the shorter ones. Most of these stories can be beaten in an hour or under an hour, and hers is the latter. Amy is shopping, reminiscing about the good old days with Sonic, that being her getting saved and escaping from Metal Sonic. During this, she spots the egg carrier going over the city, and all of a sudden a bird hits her in the face. This is the same bird as before, and Amy wants to protect him, but this robot named Zero keeps chasing her around. After hiding from him, this is when she runs into Sonic, and the whole Twinkle Park stuff happens, and she gets kidnapped. In her cell, she runs into Gamma, who demands the bird, but Amy asks why does he want it, and Gamma doesn't even know. Amy, I guess, sensing this robot is a bit different, asks Gamma to help them, in which she does. This moment being why after Sonic saves Amy, she stops him before he deals the final blow to Gamma. After this, Tails helps Amy off the egg carrier, and Amy decides to try and be more independent to not rely on Sonic so much. She then sees a picture of the bird and his family in his pendant, and decides to help the bird reunite with its family, assuming Eggman has him captive. And it turns out she's right, because when returning to the egg carrier that's now in the ocean after it crashed, the bird's family is fine until Zero hits the blue one, which pisses Amy off, and she disposes of Zero properly. The birds then fly off to who knows where, and Amy declares she'll make Sonic respect her, and when he does, it'll be too late. Yeah, Amy, we'll see about that last part. Amy's story isn't nearly as interesting as the first 3. In my opinion, the best part about it was the cutscene between her and Gamma, but that's just because Gamma's a really good character, but we'll get there. For now, let's go over a story with even less things going on. Big. I can deadass sum up his story in a few seconds. Chaos appears and somehow adds a tail to Froggy, and then when Big wakes up, Froggy swallows a Chaos Emerald. The rest of the story is Big following Froggy trying to find and fish him out of whatever body of water he found himself in, which, trust me, I will get into later. That's it. His story is just this, and the only significance Big has is that his frog gives Chaos the 6th emerald on the egg carrier. That's it. In the end, Big goes back to his little house to vibe with Froggy. A pretty uneventful story, but at the very least what was there was entertaining to watch unfold. However, I don't have the same sentiment for the last story though. Gamma was definitely my favorite in the whole game. His story starts with him waking up after just being created. His full name is E102 Gamma, and he's then told to go to the shooting range to practice. His brother, E101 Beta, is also here. After he finishes practice, he's put to the test by Eggman, and then told to fight his older brother. Whoever wins this fight will be permitted to serve on board the egg carrier. Obviously Gamma wins, but throughout this he's been told that he's not as advanced as Beta, but him winning surprised the doctor, so Beta was retired. So Gamma is now a part of the elite egg carrier crew, comprised of other E-Series robots, and their first mission is to capture Froggy. Disperse. Gamma obviously finds the frog, and then this scene happens where all the robots are arguing over who has the right frog.
This frog's the one we want. No, here's the real one.
My frog is the right one.
Ah, dummies, 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 dummies!
After that, Eggman tells Gamma to go get the bird from Amy in the room ahead, but Gamma enters the wrong room. And,
right, huh?
This must not have been easy for Gamma. It's like walking into a room and seeing your sibling get mutilated. Hearing him call out Beta's name with the music in the background just hits every time.
This is the wrong room.
Once Gamma actually makes it to the cell, the next 10 or so minutes play out the same as Amy's story. However, when Gamma leaves the egg carrier, he starts to reflect on recent events. His brother, Amy, the way Eggman treated his comrades, all these memories swirl up inside of him and cause him to defect. He now considers the E-Series robots his friends that need to be rescued from the control of Eggman, meaning he needs to release the animal inside them so they can be free. Every level from this point onwards ends with a boss fight against an E-Series robot that you destroy and free from Eggman's control. This continues until you finally see the purpose of Beta being taken apart like that. Beta, after Gamma won their fight, insisted to stick around, and Eggman tells him that they could be used for spare parts. He meant it literally, and changed them to be more powerful. He still loses to Gamma and gets set free, but earlier Gamma realized that the only people left to set free was Beta and eventually himself. So once he frees Beta, he self-destructs, freeing the bird inside him, revealing to be the relative of the bird Amy had. Gamma's death hit me right in the heartstrings, I won't lie. I had forgotten about this ending for the most part, and in general forgot how good Gamma's story turned out to be. Definitely my favorite out of the first 6 stories. After beating all of them though, one more story unlocks, Supersonic. For some reason being shown with a question mark. Before I get into that though, I need to talk about the Echidna tribes and the flashbacks. As previously stated, each one gives a new clue about what happened to these guys, culminating in the final flashback and Supersonic story. Essentially, according to this guy, after the grandmother of the tribe died, the chief of the tribe, being Tikal's father, started getting more bloodthirsty and wanted to expand his kingdom. They used to be a small country before this, but he took over the surrounding areas. Tikal hated this, not liking the violence her father was committing, and this most definitely went against her grandmother's wishes for the nation. Eventually they found the Master Emerald altar, which also housed the Chaos Emeralds, and as soon as the chief discovered that these emeralds contained great power, he tried to jump right on that shit, but Tikal tried really hard to stop her father from taking the place over, but he wouldn't listen. Tikal seemingly liked talking to the Chao and eventually Chaos when he would appear, and didn't want them to be hurt, but eventually in the final flashback and Supersonic story, the chief would make his move, but in this battle, he, and I'm guessing the Echidnas as a whole, got completely wiped out due to Chaos's rage-induced power-up. Tikal then sealed herself and Chaos in the Master Emerald to prevent further damages caused by Chaos's rage, and they wouldn't be released until Knuckles' story when the Emerald shatters. In my personal opinion, these assholes had it coming. They fucked around with Chaos and found out. That's on them. Especially after Tikal warned them numerous times, knowing that these creatures were peaceful. Chaos in the Supersonic story returns and goes around gathering the Chaos Emeralds, eventually becoming a massive monster now called Perfect Chaos that destroys Station Square and the very shortly lived rebuilt Egg Carrier. Tikal appears and just wants to steal Chaos back into the Master Realm, but Sonic doesn't want to do that because at the end of the day, if they did, Chaos will still be filled with rage and he will be suffering. The Chaos Emeralds then fall to the ground drained of energy, but Tails explains Chaos only used the negative power of the Emeralds and Sonic should in theory be able to use the positive energy. Sonic then transforms into Super Sonic to attempt to neutralize Perfect Chaos. A couple hits to the brain later and Chaos is neutralized and him and Tikal float up and disappear while Sonic goes off abandoning the destroyed city with thousands dead to find his next adventure, ending Sonic Adventure. A lot more story to explain in the Genesis titles, as you can see from the link to this video, and honestly I wasn't expecting to enjoy this as much as I did. Call me thoroughly surprised by some of the writing quality in this game. I was never bored or annoyed while watching the cutscenes, and if you're wondering why I haven't spoken about how bad some of the animations are during them, yeah, they weren't great, and games like Crash Bandicoot were came out the same year, so they definitely should have been better. I've also seen worse, and I find some of the janky cutscenes present here charming. Plus, the in-game animations are better, which I guess segues nicely into the next topic, the gameplay. To start off, Sonic himself controls like a dream. He has a new move called the homing attack, which after this game becomes a series staple. Hitting the jump button again in the air lets you zip towards the nearest enemy, destroying them instantly. You already saw me use this against the Egg Hornet boss. It makes destroying enemies in 3D easier so you don't have to awkwardly jump on them. Although that is still an option. The spin dash is now mapped to a button, so all you have to do is tap it to speed off, or hold it for a bit and let go to take off at higher speeds. It's also spammable now, meaning you can get constant speed at all times. In my Sonic 1 video, I mentioned that speed is a reward for playing well and that it's not free, but what does that mean now with a move like the spin dash always at your disposal? Well, the same thing it always has. While yes, spin dashing will get you to your running speed quickly, so in essence it is free, you still need to have the reaction time to clear the platforming segments without slowing down to maintain that speed. There are still physics present though. You can spin dash and then immediately jump off inclines to launch yourself into the air and take shortcuts, or spin dash as roll down a slope to pick up more speed than you would while running. That stuff is still present in the game, but the level design is more open-ended, allowing you to go off the beaten path and explore a lot. Levels still have different paths with their own challenges on them, but the design philosophy from the Genesis games are still true here. The top path is the fastest, but the hardest, whether it be due to tough platforming or having to maintain your speed and momentum to run up or along walls to get where you need to go. My mind is still just as active when I'm playing the Genesis games, but one problem that progressively gets worse in this franchise that starts here is automation. Sonic at this point has also evolved into a bit of a spectacle platformer. Sometimes during a level, the game will have a special camera angle and take control away from you so that they can show you something cool. This starts as early as the first Sonic level with the whale chase, but at this point in the franchise, I don't mind the automation here. It's very minimal in the grand scheme of things, as there are tons of areas I am in control in, so the automation, when it does happen, feels like the game is rewarding me with something cool, rather than the game playing itself for most of its runtime. That being said, this game makes Sonic feel cool. Besides the cheesy lines, what Sonic can do in these levels is something short of awesome. Being able to run up the large side of rocks, running on the wind, covering large distances with spin dash jumps, causing an avalanche, and then snowboarding down the mountain to escape from it, doing badass tricks in the process, only to then a few levels later run down a skyscraper to then crash into this mall and then walk out like nothing happened. Just a leisurely Sunday stroll for Sonic. Every character has to go through a hub world to get from level to level in their story, but you can also go to the trial mode and just pick a level from there. The hub worlds themselves aren't bad. Station Square is really small and hard to get lost in, but the other two, Mystic Ruins and Egg Carrier, you're more likely to get tripped up at. There is a map on the pause screen if you really get that lost. The whole reason why you'd even want to explore is because you can find upgrades for your character. Some of them are required, like Sonic's Lightspeed shoes that let him use the Lightspeed dash that lets you zip across a trail of rings. You have to rub a spin dash to charge it, and when it's full you'll glow, letting you know you can use it. Once you have this, you can immediately go get the crystal ring, which shorten the time it takes to charge the Lightspeed dash, and then later you can get the ancient light that lets you do the Lightspeed attack, which targets any nearby enemies and destroys them. I like doing this in the final level with all these robots and then clearing the whole room. It's satisfying, even if they do respawn. The other characters have similar quality and control when it comes to basic movement. Tails is a tad slower than Sonic, but honestly during gameplay it's not noticeable. His levels involve racing against Sonic, or Eggman when you need to be into the missile. These races are never hard because Tails can just fly over everything, and the green rings not only push him forward but replenish his stamina, allowing him to fly for longer. He's just okay. You don't really get to explore with his flight ability because you'll lose the race, so while he is fun, his levels are still a bit worse than Sonic's. At least he gets a new move, the Tail Whip, which doesn't amount to anything on its own, but once you get the Rhythm Badge, you can dance around the levels, constantly spinning them. It's cool. Knuckles is the first major gameplay deviant. So far the goal has been restand the level or do it first, but here Knuckles has to find different pieces of the Master Emerald. Early on you get a power that allows you to dig in the walls and the ground, and this is used to find buried emerald pieces. There's an emerald radar telling you how close you are to a piece. Blue meaning you're far, yellow you're near it, and red meaning you're damn near on top of it. The radar will ping when you're next to any piece at any time, so you can be looking for the first one and end up finding the third. This makes the levels kinda easy, but I wouldn't go as far to say they're mindless or anything. It's still fun because Knuckles can once again glide and climb up walls, so covering large distances quickly along with punching enemies who may be holding a piece themselves is enjoyable to me. Also, Knuckles curling into a ball and releasing a glide is satisfying. Amy. She's slow. But at her top speed, which is more like a jog compared to everyone else, she can use a hammer to launch herself into the air. Her weapon itself is decent on the ground for dealing with enemies, but her air hammer swing does a better job at that. This move though, the flips, really fun to do, probably because not only is it satisfying, but Amy just moves faster in the air for some reason. I'm always jumping to reach my max speed because her ground acceleration is really poor, however her levels are made with her speed in mind, so even though she can be this slow, her levels aren't bad and are kinda fun. They're even more fun when you're trying to speedrun them in time when they use her flip to skip parts of her levels. I didn't even mind that one of them went over 6 minutes. I kinda wish there were more levels too. Her gimmick is that Zero is constantly chasing you throughout her stages, and honestly, he poses no threat. Like one bump to the face with your hammer and he's out of the way, and he almost never hits his attacks. At the end of Amy's stages, you grab this balloon and you're taken out of there. It's crazy because I remember not liking Amy's story, and now I just wish there was more of it. But now we arrive at Big's gameplay. Okay, I completely understand the hatred for his fishing and his character. But I didn't think it was that bad this time around. Hell, I'll even go as far to say I like Big in this story. With the other characters, what you're doing still aligns with what people think Sonic is, beating robots, collecting rings, and then dying when you have none of those rings. Even Knuckles with his treasure hunting still isn't a total gameplay shift, you're just looking for things in a small to medium sized area. Big is a total shift in controls that aren't even that good as far as fishing mechanics go. But I gave it a fair chance, because for me, if it's good, even if it doesn't align with what people consider Sonic to be. If I'm having fun, then that's all that matters. So I sat down and genuinely tried to figure out what was going on with the controls here. Your goal is to fish Froggy out of whatever body of water he found himself in. You can see him in there, so you'll know where to cast your line. Once you're in the water, here's where people usually get frustrated. Using the analog stick, you can move the lure left or right. Doing this in front of fish can get their attention, or reeling your line will get their attention too. After messing around, I found there are two ways to reel in. Hitting A on my controller made Big reel in hard, increasing the tension gauge on the line faster than if I held the B button instead, which will make him reel in more slowly. After discovering this, I was able to slowly yet easily reel in fish without breaking my line, which would cause me to lose a life. Every once in a while I would reel in harder, but that was when the fish was either itself pulling hard or if I was close to pulling him out. Typically, when a fish bites your bait, you reel in a bit and the fish is hooked and you reel it in. That's not how Froggy works. Froggy has been one of the main reasons people hate Big's fishing so much. It's like no matter what you do, you can't hook him and it feels random when you do. Even I, after teaching myself the controls, couldn't catch Froggy. So I looked it up and saw on a Steam community page that all you have to do is flick the stick a few times while the bait is in his mouth. I later found out that in the instruction tab for Big, they do tell you all of this, but I think most people, including me, end up not looking at it because all the other characters you can jump in and figure things out just fine. Typically when controlling a new character, you can just kind of move around in the hub world and just figure out what you can and can't do very well. By the time you enter the first stage, you'll have a pretty good grasp on your character, I feel like. With Big, there's no real area in the hub world to practice how to fish, and then the things Big himself can do, you only really do like once or twice. That being picking things up, which you obviously can't do by yourself, you need an object. So by the time you hit the first level with Big, you pretty much have to figure out all the controls from there, and then, yeah, that leads to frustration. Whether or not a player after this point will just give up and quit or look at Big's instructions is up in the air, and even then, some of the directions they put in here are kinda confusing. But yeah, I'm being serious, after you learn to wiggle the analog stick in Froggy's mouth, you will catch him every time with no issue. Once I realized that, along with my prior knowledge of the mechanics, Big's story was over in less than an hour as I finished the stages in 30 seconds to a minute while the runtime was filled mostly with cutscenes. I was in shock. After the learning process, I kinda began to somewhat enjoy the fishing. I say somewhat because these are still barely passable fishing mechanics with a horrendous camera that makes things more difficult than they need to be, but it wasn't horrible. I enjoyed my time playing as Big, which is something I did not think would happen. Gamma is probably my second favorite character to play as. His levels revolve around shooting enemies, racking up combos so that you can get a bigger time bonus added to the clock. The timer counts down instead of up, but truthfully it doesn't matter. The average person should be able to reach the end before the time is anywhere close to running out. Except for in this stage with the train cars, I can get running out of time in this one. Gamma when holding the X button will point out a laser sensor that when pointing at enemies will let Gamma lock onto them. After that, letting go of the button causes Gamma to shoot homing shots that zeroes in on enemies, destroying them instantly. This is really fun, and later Gamma gets an upgrade that allows him to hover for a bit midair, which makes this even more enjoyable. I don't have much else to say. Shooting stuff in a fast-paced platformer is fun. And lastly, Supersonic in the ending is just you rushing forward trying not to get hit by chaos' projectiles. Nothing much to go over there. Overall, I enjoy playing as every character, at least to some degree. Once I figured out the controls for them and got comfortable, none of them were terrible to play as. But why would you replay these levels anyway? There's no ranking system and score attacks might not be everyone's cup of tea. This is where two mechanics come in that greatly enhances this game's replayability. Emblems are given to you at the end of every level and a few minigames you play like the Tornado Egg Carrier Chase or Tails' of Sam Hill minigame. Every stage is a C, B, and A mission. C is always reach the end and you'll get an emblem. For Sonic, Tails, Amy, and Gamma, their B mission is to get 50 rings and then reach their goal, and their A mission is to get to their goal within a certain time. Gamma is a little different because you have to get to his goal with a certain amount of time remaining, but it's the same concept. Knuckles' B mission is to get the Emerald Shards without using any hints, and his A mission is to get all three within the first minute. Big's B and A mission is to catch Froggy after having a certain amount of weight from catching other fish first. Some emblems can also be found in the overworld, and they also aren't just for completion purposes. Collecting enough will unlock Game Gear Sonic games you can play anytime. I've never played Sonic Drift before this video, but the invincibility theme is an 8-bit rendition of Tutu Sonic Warrior. So that's cute. Getting all 130 emblems unlocks a Metal Sonic skin. I didn't do that for this playthrough. Frankly, I've never 100%ed the games in this era before. Maybe I'll give it a try one day, but not now. This next mode, to my knowledge, doesn't give you emblems. Mission mode is kinda here. In it, touching these ID things will start a mission. It's usually something simple like go to Twinkle Park Raceway, collect flags, pop these balloons, get rings, and bring it to the Sonic X poster. Wait, what? Completing these doesn't do anything to my knowledge, but if you want to, it's there. The second, or I guess now that I think about it, the third mechanic, is something a lot more people actively engage with. Throughout this video, you might have noticed little animals I pick up from the robots. This can be taken to one of the 3 Chao guards in the game where you can then feed them to these little guys, which raises their stats depending on the animal. Chaos are fucking adorable, and if you don't like them, you're a monster. Nothing else needs to be said. And while I do love Chao and this system a lot, I'm not going to go much into it here. I'll save a whole segment dedicated to this in the Sonic Adventure 2 video where I'll go a bit more in depth about it there. But for now, the Chao Garden in Sonic Adventure is fine, but is expanded upon and overall is way better than the sequel. You can still enter your Chao in races though, where their stats will help them win, and these are required if you want all the emblems, so there's that. The music during these races is great too. Sonic Adventure has an amazing OST with songs spanning different genres like rock, rap, jazz, the works. All the stage themes are great stuff, with Windy Valley holding a remix of Green Girl from Sonic 3D Blast where Jun Senoue just fucks it up on the track. In fact, Jun's work really shines in this game. This is when Sonic really started to lean more into that rock direction, and the result is some of the best music out of the franchise. But in Adventure specifically, we got some iconic tracks like Azure Blue World, Pleasure Castle, everything that plays in Casinopolis. In fact, I'll just play my favorites here. We can't talk about this game's soundtrack without mentioning the vocal themes. Every character except for Gamma has their own vocal theme that ties into their goals or ideologies, and I love all of them. It Doesn't Matter is a great track portraying Sonic's iron will to push through struggle and do what he believes is right. Tails' song is really cute. Believe in Myself is about Tails wanting to find confidence in himself so he can be able to excel independently from Sonic, tying into his character arc in the story. This next one, a lot of my friends who don't even play Sonic have heard, but yes, it comes from this game.
Rougher than the rest of them, the best of them, tougher than leather. You can call me Knuckles. Unlike Sonic, I don't chuckle. I'd rather flex my muscles.
Unknown from ME is about Knuckles seeking to accomplish his goal without relying on other people, gassing himself up while he's at it. He means well and wants to protect his home, but in his own way. Amy's theme is My Sweet Passion, and it's about her affection for Sonic. Go figure. It's a good song, but pales in comparison to the best character theme in the game. Lazy Days Living in Paradise. I unironically love this song. The chords, the vocalist, it just sounds so good. This one highlights Big and Froggy's relationship as this chill duo just sits around enjoying the days passing by. They are very much normal people living their lives compared to Sonic and his friends. That's all the character themes, however there is one more vocal theme and it's the main theme of the game, Open Your Heart. This plays during the opening of the game and during the final fight with Chaos, basically being a banger about having Chaos open his heart and let go of years of hate he's been holding on to. If not, he'll
remain bound by the chain of memories.
Sonic Adventure was way better than I remembered. Kick-ass music, entertaining story with charming characters, great gameplay for the most part, and no see that stands tall still as one of the best in the franchise. If you want to play it nowadays, I recommend you get on Steam and mod it. This footage you've been seeing isn't the Dreamcast original, it's a modded version of the Steam release, which is based off the Sonic Adventure DX Director's Cut port. This version looks worse than the original release except for the character models. Those look better. For some reason, the Steam version is in 4x3, and I have no idea why. So for this video, I used the Dreamcast conversion mod and some other standalone mods that attempt to make the Steam version look like the Dreamcast version but in widescreen, and able to be played at a higher resolution. It's not too hard to set up, there's plenty of tutorials, and when you're done, you'll have the best version of the game ready to be played. And that's it for Sonic Adventure. Starting off the 3D stuff with a positive note, I see, but next up is Sonic Adventure 2. Just like with this game, I mostly only really played the Sonic levels, but I'm interested to see how I feel about the game as a whole when I play it next time. But yeah, this video took me a bit. Like I said, not only due to, just other stuff happening in life and, work and all that stuff, but also in general. As you can tell, this one was a chunky motherfucker, but hey, I got it done, and I'm happy to post this for y'all. So yeah. Next time I see y'all, I'll be talking about Sonic Adventure 2. Peace.